So someone asked whether hypnosis for weight losses is actually good.
Okay. So hypnosis is, look, there's a lot of bullshit around hypnosis. If you look at it in terms of just ways to influence the unconscious part of your mind, which is where a lot of your behaviors are driven, that's the way that you want to think about it. So hypnosis can be a useful tool for any behavioral change, okay, including weight loss. It's not a miracle cure. It's just one thing that can be added in. You can be hypnotized every day of the week, but if you don't change your calories in versus calories out, you're not going to lose any weight. But in terms of changing your identity, our behaviors are always aligned to our unconscious identity. So you guys behave in certain ways because your identity is that, hey, I'm a fighter, okay? So you live and act a certain way that reflects that. And anything that would not be congruent with that idea, like if you had a paper cut and you said, oh, I can't go to training and got a paper cut on my finger, that's not congruent with the life of a fighter. So you reject that behavior, okay? So hypnosis can be useful in terms of changing identity and thus changing behavior, but it's not a miracle cure. It is good, but it's not the be all and end all. Sorry, it's still hard work and effort.
So in other words, yeah, just get your ass in the gym, and that's the best way to do it.
Pretty much.
That's the best way to change your behavior over time. If you need some help with motivation, yeah, sure, you can have some ways to change your unconscious, but the fact of the matter is you still got to put the work in.
100%, yeah. I've got a question here. So any tips on lifting weights while you have tendinitis?
Yeah, good question. So tendinitis, just for our listeners that may not be familiar, is inflammation of a tendon, okay? It goes into a big umbrella. So you've got tendinitis, tenosynovitis, and tendinosis, okay? Without getting too technical, tendinitis is just your acute, I've played tennis on the weekend, or I've been digging a trench and my elbow's flared up because I've got CEO tendinitis, okay? Important to still lift weights with tendinitis, and because you need to actually load that tendon to get the cells to remodel over time. However, how you would do that, you need to be guided by a good strength coach or a physio. So oftentimes, if we're starting from scratch, someone's just been doing a lot of box jumps, let's say, and they've got some patellar tendinitis, we get them to do some static holds on that tendon. So we might get them to do a leg extension out to the top position and hold it for 3 sets of 30, 45 seconds, some 45-degree knee angle squats, where you're just bringing that tendon onto tension and doing a gentle sustained hold in the early stages. Then we progress you back into your lifting regime. And there's no way to know before starting. We might have to make a bit of a guess and say, okay, well, Jake, last week you're doing 3 sets of 10 with 100 kilos on the squat. This week we're going to back it off. You're going to do 3 sets of 10 at maybe 65, 70. And then everything we do is going to be calibrated from how you respond. So if you respond really well, great. Next session, let's add 10% on the intensity. But without getting too technical, we start off with static holds. Then we get back into your regular isotonic contractions. That's going through the whole range of movement under resistance. And then we would test the tendon out over different stages of plyometric. So Physio Australia, we use a 4-stage program, and that's what I've just summarized. So you don't want to rest. The tendon won't get better if you rest. However, it won't get better if you keep flaring it up. So you need to work with your physio to find where that sweet spot is. They can use some manual therapy techniques to take the edge off the pain, but it won't change the tendon. And they can use some techniques like taping and bracing just to take the edge off so that you can do your strength and conditioning without feeling any pain. So that's a summary of what we would do to approach it. But yeah, if you're struggling, definitely go and see your local physio or strength coach.
So it's not an excuse to have a little sore elbow and not train.
No, you can. So here's the thing. If a good physio will modify your activity, they won't eliminate it.
Okay, yeah. That's why if we took a day off every time we had a sore elbow, we'd never train.
You'd get nothing done. And do you know what? It would be worse than that because your body would start to decondition. So all of a sudden, you wouldn't be able to do anything without it hurting. So you always need to build in a tolerance level for your tissues. And guess what? The only way you do that is to load it progressively over time.
Yeah, I can say this. You have never once, maybe for my worst injury, you've told me to have a few days off. You have never once told me to have a day off or to not train for a period of time. You've always been able to modify it or in fact, like sometimes exercising and doing weights and stuff is mainly the way that we fix things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
sweet.
And I think we know that now in physical therapy, because a lot of our evidence comes out of the US, we know that we need to keep people active. The question is, okay, well, where do we find out where that sweet spot is for that person? And we can use some templates and some guidelines, but at the end of the day, honestly, it comes down to the practitioner's experience with that given individual and saying, okay, I'm going to start you here, and then I'm going to adjust depending on how you react.
Nice.
Recovering after training. What do you reckon the best form of recovery after training is? Like ice baths and friggin' warm baths and salt baths.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It used to be, back in the 80s, they started this whole icing movement. We've actually found that if you jump into cold water immersion after training, you slightly decrease your recovery rate. Okay, it's not a big deal, but you decrease the rate of protein synthesis. Many studies have found. So we would say, based on that, jumping into an ice bath, for example, after a hard training session, it's probably not quite the way to go. You need to look at it again from a holistic point of view. So the big one in terms of recovery is sleep. Okay, it's the simplest one, but it's the most important. You need to make sure you're getting in that, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 hours for athletes, because sleep is going to do so much more. Then we need to look
try that with a 15-month-old.
Yeah, exactly. And this has come back to the point of, okay, the individual. In an ideal world, you'd have them sleeping 9 hours, but they're not going to let dad go to sleep, so we have to figure out ways around that. So sleep's number one, and then in terms of nutrition, which I include hydration in that bunch together, so making sure you're getting enough protein. Are you getting at least 1 gram per pound of body weight? If not, that's going to start to impact your recovery. Then physical exercise. Believe it or not, when you're feeling sore, it's better to move and take your muscles through stretch, shorten cycle, i.e. do some light resistance exercise. It will help your recovery. Getting that heart rate up. You're not going to smash yourself again, but getting that heart rate up to maybe 110, 120 for 5-10 minutes, just doing some easy work on a bike, for example, can help to get that circulation going, get the endorphins going, get you feeling a lot better. In terms of, so they're the most important. They're also the least fancy. In terms of the more fancy stuff, heat immersion seems to work nicely for many things, including working on DNA sequencing. So jumping into a sauna, for example, or hot box, provided it doesn't affect your hydration, seems to be a really, really promising area where we're finding some interesting studies done. So that would be the main. If you can get those under control, they would be 95% of your recovery. The rest is just 5%.
We'll have to get you in. We have to call time now, but we'll have to get you in studio and elaborate a bit more on it, because I reckon a lot of we're trying to target a lot of the local sort of guys as well and up and comers. I think it's definitely important that they hear this stuff, because I think you'd find a lot of people pull the pin on martial arts. Not even necessarily their career, just people who just train. I know people who pull the pin because they're just the elbows are sore 24/7. They're just whatever the injury is, it's just lingering around, and they're probably not just doing the right things to fix it, and they end up just stopping martial arts, which is it's always a shame when someone stops. So I reckon it's important for people to hear this stuff for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, thanks for your time, Ben.
No worries at all, boys.
Once all this COVID garbage is over, we'll get you in studio and you can get some diagrams. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can put a whiteboard up, put some
needles,
pictures.
I might lose people with diagrams. I'll just stick with basic cartoons.
Sounds good, man. Thanks again for your time, brother.
Thanks, boys. Look forward to catching up soon.